Ew, hey besties, how are you? I hope you are well, or as you possibly can be. I took a red-eye flight yesterday and I'm still not fully human, as you can probably see by how my eyes are. Hi, thank you for joining, but I wanted to hop in really quickly because today's the day to celebrate because Mercury is officially out of retrograde. It's direct, and I feel like this is going to create such an energetic shift in how we are showing up in the world and how we are showing up for ourselves. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what we could expect, how to work with the fact that now it's direct and we can kind of like utilize action and forward movement again. And just to check in with my besties. This isn't about me, but I turn 26 tomorrow. And so I'm really in this state of understanding how I can take back the narrative of my life again. I didn't forfeit the narrative, but in some ways I did. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about why that has so much to do with Mercury going direct and how you can do the same. So thank you for joining. The journaling prompt that I shared on the page today is, I forgot what the prompt I shared was, but it has something to do with narrative. What story am I writing for myself? Thank you so much. Thank you. Happy birthday to you, babe. It's all of our birthdays. The journaling prompt that I shared is, what story am I writing for myself? And the reason why I think this is such an important one to look at with Venus and Mercury both being officially direct is because we have learned so many valuable lessons over the past 2 months. I mean, retrogrades are not just like cosmic shakeups just to bring us chaos and then peace out. There are periods of reflection. There are periods where plans, may go to the beat of their own drum, and where we kind of have to forfeit control over what we experience so that we can learn lessons, so that we can be in a state of reflection and recalibration. And I think, if anything, it's important to not let the experiences you've had over the past few months be in vain. Look at who moved into your life, who moved out of your life, what you learned about yourself, and how just what you learned about what it means to live life at its fullest potential, what needed to go, what you want to nurture a bit more. Really make sure to be intentional about looking at what you have learned over these past 2 months specifically. 2 years really, but especially with these Venus and Mercury retrogrades, Mercury ruling our mind, how we stand in our worth, how we stand in our words, and Venus ruling, our relational dynamics, and understanding that Pluto is playing such a role. Mercury is conjoined Pluto, Venus in retrograde was conjoined Pluto. So there was also this element of what about our shadow world and what about our fears is playing a role in how we're showing up in the world. And so understanding that everything that you learned and experienced over these past 2 months is so imperative for how you now move forward, how you build a routine, how you chase and value and build your dreams, but ultimately the story that you are writing for yourself. So yeah. So a little narrative, a little tidbit, a little insight into my life to connect it with what this is. I just came back from Arizona where I was born, and I saw my dad for the first time in 6 years. And I had really realized that I had built such an identity behind having a daddy issue, right? We don't realize that we can build such a comfort in a pain that is familiar to us. And so this Mercury retrograde, this Venus retrograde was really a chance for us to look at all of the stories that we have written about ourselves and how those stories have bled into our relational dynamics. If you, for instance, in my case, I think having a daddy issue really made me comfortable in having emotionally distant relational experiences and sort of being someone who didn't demand much from partnership. And so understanding that that was a story that I was feeding so relentlessly, and that I had the power and the ability. And ultimately with this retrograde going direct, I have the pen is being gifted back to us to look at what have you realized about your life and how you have sort of fed narratives and dynamics, and how can you be brave enough to rewrite those. I think Mercury going direct is a chance to really stand in forward movement and to build routines and discipline in relation to the action that we take that will build a life on a daily macro and micro scale to honor what we have learned about ourselves and to honor the narratives that we have been feeding that we no longer want to feed and that we ultimately want to change. And I realized, especially seeing my dad, that I had built such a comfort in the identity of someone who had a daddy issue, because that was a really safe excuse to hide behind, so that I didn't have to show up in relational dynamics vulnerably and intimately. And it was a place that I could kind of hide behind. And so understanding that working alongside this Mercury retrograde means using these past 2 months and what you have learned about yourself and what you no longer want to experience, what cycles you no longer want to participate in, to color in how you change and rewrite those narratives. And that starts on a large scale, but it also begins truly at the micro steps, the changes in verbiage, the relationships or the habits that you no longer want to feed, that you do feed. I think for me, it meant really changing the narrative about, I mean, I keep bringing this back to me because it connects, but like how I even speak about my dad is different now. I think I went before with like, oh man, that nigga's crazy. Like we have a messed up relationship, to like, now I'm like, oh, I love my dad and our relationship has been strained before, but we're working on mending it. Just even changing the small, the verbiage that you build around an experience in your life is such an empowering thing. And using this Mercury retrograde to once again reflect on what you have learned, what has been brought into your awareness, not only about, especially with Pluto being in action there, not only about the things that have happened to you, but ultimately how you have allowed what has happened to you to be the home that you stay in terms of like old dynamics and old ways of being. And maybe nothing happened to you and you've just built a comfort in being lazy or, victimhood, whatever no longer resonates with who you are choosing to evolve into. Now is the time to take action in terms of deconstructing that and building a routine that honors your fullest potential. So like on the ground level, we're back into action. We're back into fluid movement. If you felt like things have been stagnant at all, if you've been waiting or putting off, embarking on certain projects or signing certain documents, now is the time to move forward. We're still in the shadow period, but ultimately, I don't know if you guys feel this shift in internal weather. I'm feeling a lot of things. It's weird because during the retrograde, I was feeling a lot, but I felt more in control. It's typically when things go direct that you really feel it. But with that being said, there is a sense of the baton being passed back to us right now. So take action, move forward. What else do I have? Yeah, build routines. I think Mercury is something that we want to refer to whenever we look at our routines. And so having awareness of what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and ultimately who you see yourself as in your fullest potential. How can you build a routine that feeds and nourishes that version of yourself on a micro level? So if that means, honoring a daily meditative routine, if that means committing to writing a chapter of your book every single day, however you can sort of squeeze the large idea of yourself into very small micro steps to take on a daily basis. Now is the time to get clear on that and to execute on that and to be really unwavering when it comes to that. And yeah, send those emails, put yourself out there, really make sure that you are embarking on, especially with Mercury being the one that's direct right now, it's our mind and it's our words and it's our knowledge, our intellectuality, our power, and the power that we stand in our words. So not only do you want to embark on those, if you have something to say, if you have something to write, now is the time to do it. But ultimately, it's a time to be so hyperactively clear and aware of the words that you are saying and the verbiage that you are building around this period in your life or the things that you are calling in. So once again, referring back to myself, I'm being so adamant about changing the narrative and the language that I use about my relationship with my father and how I no longer am going to build a home in that being something that's broken, but rather understanding that, we can get really stuck striving for a version of perfection instead of striving for wholeness, and understanding that you being whole can encompass wounds, it can encompass traumas, and understanding that forgiving or standing in a place where the language that you use to describe something is supportive and loving doesn't bypass the experience of it, and it still exists within your wholeness. But wholeness means understanding that I can still be complete, I can still choose a new narrative, I can still move forward with all these experiences within me. So yeah, just changing the narrative on how you talk about things. If you are, an actor and you want to book a job, stop feeding the narrative with I can't, or I haven't, or it's so difficult, but start with I'm in the process of, or I'm inviting in, just really watching the way that you speak about yourself and how you speak about your life experiences and how you speak about the version of yourself that you want to arrive to, and not making it such a distinct thing that you are separated from, but rather, just bridging where you're at now with where you want to go. So yeah, also I want to say that with Mercury going direct, conjoined Pluto, there may be some shadow work that still is asking to be looked at. That's normal, babe, especially because we're in the shadow period. But Pluto is a planet that demands transparency. And so if you have been having conversations, experiences that feel a little blurred, that don't feel direct, whether it's with people or it's professional, now is the time to be very direct, concise, and clear on what you are demanding, what you are asking for, what you are offering, and demand transparency back. Just really utilize the sharpness that we have with Mercury going direct to stand in a, just an unwaveringly adamant place of demanding transparency and being very direct, and no longer, this is no like beating around the bush. We've been beating around the bush for 2 months. We've been delaying things. We've been like observing and feeling. Now is the time to move forward. Now is the time to ask for what you want, because now you know what you want, and you know what you want on a core level rather than a conditioned or safe level. And get very specific, like I said, action. So send those emails, stand in a place where you are like doing, but ultimately, get very specific about what you are calling in. I think it's so important that we use the lessons we've learned during this Venus and Mercury retrograde to build a deeper sense of self-awareness when it comes to what we want and who we are. And now that you are aware of, okay, like this is what my body and soul needs rather than what I've been told I need or what's safe, now is the time to get very specific about what's going to nourish the version of you that you are standing in. So get specific, demand transparency, take action, build a routine that honors who you are evolving into, and ultimately understand that the narrative is yours, the pen is yours, and that you can now rewrite the stories that you have been telling yourself about yourself, and you can set yourself free. So yes, Mercury is direct. We love to hear it. Venus is direct. This is a beautiful, beautiful time to take action and walk towards who we want to be in our fullness and in our largeness. I'm celebrating with you. And yeah, I'm turning 26 tomorrow. So I'm just really, I'm in a place where I'm no longer surrendering the fullness of who I am to any fears or any old narratives that I've built comfort in. So I hope that you are in a place where that makes sense for you as well. I'm sending you guys all my love. I'll see you for the full moon in Leo that I'm very excited about. And yeah, that's it. Bye, guys.